Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Can't Do This Alone. I'm your host, Erin Stitzel, and today we're doing a follow-up episode to an episode that dropped in April about giving circles. So it's so timely because last week, the new Giving USA report landed. So Giving USA, it's the longest running study of charitable giving in the United States. And, at first glance, the headlines look great. Americans gave a record of $617 billion in 2025. This is the first time that we've crossed that 600 billion threshold. So you would think that generosity is thriving, but reading past those headlines shows a very different story. Fewer than half of households in the United States give at all. And that number keeps falling. Half of all the dollars now come from less than half of 1% of donors. Let that sink in. The everyday giver, the person writing the $50 check, the $100 check, is quietly walking away. We are raising more money from fewer and fewer people, and the average nonprofit loses well over half its donors every single year. So the real crisis in philanthropy, it's not about the amount of dollars being raised, but it's about how few people are actually giving. So that brings me why I wanted to have this conversation today. So earlier this year, my friends Mary Beth Knieve and Danielle Hall, along with Krista and Susie, they started the 100 Strong. So I didn't really know anything about this, but it seemed easy enough. Donate $100 twice a year, pool your money with the other members, and then a collective amount would be given to a charity that members vote upon. So back in April, I sat down with Mary Beth and Danielle, Krista, and Susie of the 100 Strong here on this podcast. And in doing this podcast, I learned so much more, not just about what the 100 Strong is, but also what a giving circle is. Come to find out, giving circles are the fastest growing form of philanthropy in the United States. So again, let that sink in for a second. So in a moment where donors are vanishing, this one model is growing faster than anything else. And it is built on pooling everyday gifts, those $50, $100 gifts, and bringing brand new people into supporting our nonprofits. So if the rest of the sector is fishing from a smaller and smaller pond, giving circles are out there digging new ponds and bringing in new folks. So I have found this so intriguing that I decided we needed a follow-up episode. So today I am so excited to welcome today's guest, Emily Rasmussen. Emily Rasmussen is the resident expert on giving circles, but she's also the founder and CEO of Grapevine, the tech platform that makes it easy not just to start a giving circle, but to also participate in a giving circle. Emily, I'm so excited to have you here on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Erin. Excited to be here with you.
Thank you. So, Emily, before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit about you? Tell us about your journey all the way up into, how did you come to form Grapevine?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. So my background really in this sector started more on the inclusive finance side. I became quite interested in microfinance when I was in college and spent some time interning at the UN to learn more about that, and ultimately moved to India for a few years to work on building a microfinance program there. And so through that work, I developed this deep understanding and belief in the power of hyper-local giving and getting even small dollar amounts of funds into the hands of community members to collaborate around where this money should go, and the value of social proof and social accountability and all of those good things. And so that's really my, I would say, founding experience in this kind of a model. And around this time when I was working on this program in India, the early days of crowdfunding really started to take off. So Kiva was really hitting its stride, and Kickstarter was just launching. And so we were seeing how technology could really help unlock more funds for impact-related programs and organizations. So I became very enthralled by that and started to think about how could this model help unlock funds from and for communities around the world. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have a technology background, so I didn't know what that could look like. But I started to pursue that in my work and exploration. And ultimately, I went to business school to think more about that. And I was able to spend some time in the crowdfunding sector. I was able to do some consulting for Kickstarter and launched a crowdfunding platform. And ultimately, through those experiences, I saw the power of crowdfunding, but also the opportunity to create something different, something that was even more purposeful. even more connected, and something that went beyond that transactional crowdfunding campaign. Ultimately, I went into the nonprofit sector for a while after school and started to explore some more concepts around how this model could be applied to the nonprofit sector specifically. And all of that led me to what was initially, or the initial exploration, I should say, of Grapevine. And we didn't have a clear picture of it at the time, but what I can tell you is that I didn't know giving circles were a thing at that time. I was really coming at this more from how can we create an alternative to crowdfunding, something that I was and still call crowd granting, something that's more purposeful and connected and community building. And as we started experimenting with some different concepts around that, a few giving circles discovered us and reached out. So that's how we first started working in this space. And then I like to say Grapevine was really built by and for giving circles because it was such a collaborative effort as soon as those first giving circles reached out even today when I'm giving demos to giving circles, they'll say things like, wow, you really thought of everything. And I always say, well, it's because of people like you who have told us everything that you need that we built into it in the process.
Well, let's quickly describe to our audience what is a giving circle. Maybe, give the couple minute description of what exactly a giving circle is.
It's a very simple concept. It's about a group of people that come together to connect, pool their donations, and collaborate to make larger collective gifts as a group. How people do that, where people do that, all of these things vary significantly. So we have very tiny giving circles with just a few members, families, book clubs, things like that. Much larger giving circles with hundreds or even close to 1,000 members we've seen. We have giving circles that focus just on giving back to their local area, but across a broad range of causes. Others that stay focused on a specific cause, but will support that across a broad range of locations. Different ways that giving circles identify nonprofits and go through that collaborative decision-making process, whether they're nominating and voting as a membership or having a smaller committee that accepts and reviews applications from nonprofits. So as you can see, there's a lot of variation, but at the heart of it, it's really about pooling our knowledge, our networks, and our funds in order to make a bigger difference together.
Well, I love that. And, as I'd mentioned, my intro to this was joining a giving circle, the 100 Strong here in Central Ohio. And again, like I'd said, seems easy enough, give $100 twice a year, collectively pool those dollars. And what was really cool about it was so this has just started this year. And I will say kudos to the 100 Strong in Central Ohio. I think they've even been surprised by how fast the group grow. I think they have probably at least 250 members, and they're the first grant cycle. The event was in April, where I think $22,000 or $23,000 was given. The cool part was actually two of the recipients were charities that I'd never heard of. And so, I have served on the board of a smaller nonprofit. Oh my gosh, where every single dollar really matters. So I think it's so cool that we could, $100 you think isn't going to do much for a charity, but $23,000 does. And to give it to those, especially some of those causes that we might not have heard of, right? And so maybe, as I mentioned earlier, giving circles right now are the fastest growing form of philanthropy in the United States. I've been in philanthropy 25 years. I had no idea what it was at first. So talk about that, Emily. Where does that stat come from? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so there was a great study done a couple of years ago that was released in 2024 from the Johnson Center of Philanthropy, and it looked at the giving circle landscape. It was the first study of giving circles that had been done in about 6 years or so. And what it found is that during that period, and it actually looked specifically at the 5-year period prior to the study being published, during that period, giving circles had rapidly grown. And we saw a significant increase in the number of giving circles and the number of members getting involved in giving circles and the amount of money that had been moved. Specifically, in that 5-year period, they found that 370,000 people had engaged in giving circles, and they had given $3.1 billion
Wow.
through roughly 4,000 giving circles that had been identified. And according to that stat, or those stats, Axios actually did a piece on the giving circle report that came out and identified it as the fastest growing form of philanthropy based on those numbers. And so I think, it's a significant number of people engaged, and it's a significant amount of money moved. But when you look at, I will name, right, when you look at the broader philanthropic ecosystem, it's still a relatively small amount of money being moved by this community, but a much larger number of people being engaged. So I call that out because I think there's a real opportunity actually for us to get this model adopted by many of these larger organizations, larger donors to leverage the same collaborative model of giving and or to partner with these smaller, more local groups in a way through matching donations, for example, or other means to really help unlock even more funds through this people-powered movement.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head because that's what we're talking about with, the number of people in this country decreasing every year giving. So I work in healthcare. The audience knows, I've worked in healthcare for 25 years. In healthcare, typically donors are older, the ones making those major gifts. And we're always talking about how can we get younger folks involved. Younger people are still using healthcare. Obviously, people my age, well, younger than me, maybe a decade ago, were having babies, can't afford to give that, that 10,000, 25,000 major gift, but could afford $100 or $250. So I don't think the larger number matters. I think what matters here is exactly what you said. It's getting more and more people into the fold.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, Erin. And I think we're seeing that in the research as well, that actually giving circles are a really wonderful on-ramp into a larger philanthropic life, if you will, and even a larger civic engagement life, right? And so we see that giving circle members tend to volunteer more, give more, be more civically involved. And we see that giving circle members, when they discover nonprofits through their giving circle experience, tend to find ones that really resonate with them, right? And they then go on to become direct volunteers, direct donors, board members. And so it really is this powerful way, and I think a very accessible and enjoyable way for people to learn and begin a philanthropic journey. And what we tend to see is that the Giving Circle experience is just one part of their overall giving. So whether this is a more established philanthropic person who already has nonprofits to share and experience to share with the group, that's extremely valuable, and that helps fuel the learning and the engagement from others. And this tends to be one piece of their overall giving, right, that they're doing outside of it. So you have that profile, and then you have these other profiles of people who are coming in and just getting started and getting to learn from others and continue to build out then their engagement beyond the giving circle over time.
Well, and I think, one of the cool things about the Giving Circle model, at least the one that I'm involved in, is the social aspect. We get to come together twice a year to gather, have a glass of wine. It's mostly women. We
Mm-hmm.
enjoy that type of thing. And, we'll talk about some actual models in a second too, mostly women. And I think, there's two really important angles about that. Something, Emily, that you brought up to me around loneliness, around, people, are increasingly kind of more cut off. Since the pandemic and so forth. And so, this Giving Circle model can really help people build community, which is so important. And that is something that I think people, nonprofits, are increasingly wanting, is building community around the causes that they're excited about. And I can think of, for example, so my background's in Catholic healthcare, and before I joined my consulting firm, I helped start a women's auxiliary. The hospital I worked at, we raised a ton of money for moms and babies. We had 5,000 births a year, and we had a group of women from the local Catholic church who really felt passionately about that. And, they wanted to have community. They wanted to come together. They wanted to plan things together, and they wanted to make an impact to something very real. And so at the time, this wonderful group of ladies, they started planning a big event where we would bring in like a local or a national author and kind of do a book event. And it was really fun, but I keep thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if I would have known about this Giving Circle model back then, what a great path for this group of ladies to have embarked upon. I think it would have elevated their experience with our hospital and their philanthropy. So talk about that, Emily, about this whole notion around the community that giving circles bring.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a core part of the model. As I said, when you asked me to describe a giving circle, the first thing I always like to share is it's about a group of people that come together to connect and pool their donations, right, and make an impact. But we've asked tens of thousands of people who have joined giving circles on Grapevine why they joined, and the number one reason people share is to connect with other like-minded and like-hearted people, right? And so it is an intention that a lot of people come into these groups with. And I think the most successful groups we've seen are those, like the group you mentioned earlier, that recognize that and lean into that and create space for that connection. Certainly around the learning and the grant making and all of that related to philanthropy and impact. And in many cases, even beyond that. Right? Whether it's group volunteering, social hours, other opportunities for people to really build those connections. And so I think we see this anecdotally. We also see this in the research. So that same Johnson Center for Philanthropy study I mentioned found that 91% of members said that being part of their giving circle increased their sense of belonging to a community. So that's really powerful, when we look at the actual experience people are having and not just the goal that they have going in to participating in their giving circle. We also saw that 83% of members said that being part of their giving circle increased their confidence to make change in their community.
Oh, I
So when
love
we
that.
talk about, right, isn't that so when we talk about things like, that sense of hopelessness where people feel like, well, what could I do? What can my
Hmm.
$100 possibly do? Well, actually quite a lot when you pool that $100 with 100 other members and now you have or 99 other members and now you have $10,000 collectively to give to a local nonprofit where to your point a lot of these funds are being directed to these smaller, more local, more diverse and often underfunded causes and organizations where those dollars do go much further. And you can see that, in this work, you get to really, you get exposed to the impact in a way through this model that you wouldn't have the opportunity to if you were just giving that $100 separately on your own time. So I think, the impact of this model is really compelling and but it speaks to the community-based piece of this, right, is what is so powerful because it enables that level of impact and it enables that connection and community building that is incredibly valuable for people. And now more than ever, when we think about the trust epidemic and the connection crisis and the loneliness epidemic and all of these things, that we're talking about in society right now, the landscape that we're operating in, this is a real bright spot amidst all of that.
Well, and I think, what I was going to say is, I think, my 25 years in philanthropy, in healthcare, I mean, it's when I started in healthcare philanthropy, it was like raise money for the building or the Black Hole Fund, the area of greatest need. That's gotten a ton harder. People want to give to people, they want to give to programs, they want to really see their dollars in action. And so I think that's probably another reason why this model is
Mhm.
increasingly in popularity because, again, you can see the dollars go to a smaller nonprofit who you're gonna see that impact right away. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we talk to Giving Circle members, they talk about the impact as a we. We helped build that playground. We launched this program. There's a real sense of connection and ownership to that. So again, even if they're giving $100 when pooled with others, now they're part of that $10,000 or $15,000 check, and that's impact they can actually see and often right in their community, literally see and touch. It just has a whole other experiential element to it. And I think the other piece around this is that community piece where you get to connect with other people who also care about this community, who also care about this issue. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of these nonprofits starting to pay attention to this model in a bigger way and think about how can we build that same level of connection and community around the cause that we're focused on.
well, and so that brings, let's talk back about healthcare. So, when the episode dropped, the last episode in April, and, so I'm in consulting for healthcare philanthropy. I work all over the country. And one of my clients, more on the West Coast, asked me, he said, well, that was a really interesting episode. Do you think we could do a giving circle here for the hospital? And, healthcare, I mean, healthcare, it's kind of like higher ed. I mean, you know, larger dollars raised, so to speak. It is kind of sometimes could be a little bit harder to like see, oh, I'm helping this actual person.
For sure.
But, regardless of that, healthcare, I mean, it is full of passionate folks,
Mhm.
most of which are patients and family members who had their life has been saved, or the doctor or the nurse, change the course of their care. And it's many times it's not even the medical act that causes the gratitude. It's the little things that our doctors and nurses and caregivers are doing every day. And, so many times, for those of you who've worked with me, I always say the typical patient donor, they just want to give to help others the way they were helped. And so we started looking into this, could a giving circle work in healthcare? We found a couple of examples. For example, TriHealth in Cincinnati, where I'm from, they have a giving circle. It's called the McCullough Hyde Women's Giving Circle. The entry point's $1,000, and they support causes at TriHealth that empower women and children. And I think they've collectively given about $121,000 and they give to several different programs every single year. There's an organization in Wisconsin from Pro Healthcare. The organization is called Women Connected. They have a couple of different entry points. You can give $250, 500 or 1,000, but they've given over $2 million collectively. And again, these are all mostly women who are again coming together through building this community, giving. But even on these websites, the first thing it's saying is we're pooling our donations to have bigger impact. And so, let's talk about what could this look like in healthcare, Emily, for the typical hospital foundation.
I love hearing this, and I think there are many ways for this to take shape in that setting. But I love that it's what you're seeing is that language around pooling, right? Because I think
Mhm.
that really is core to this model. People feel like they can do more together. They can do more with others than they can alone. And so, how do we create a model that leverages that, right? That leans into that opportunity. And of course, there's the pooling of dollars. So, yes, let's think about how we can pool dollars. And then with a larger pool of funds, we can do so much more with those funds than we could if we were each giving to something individually. And maybe with that larger pool of funds, the organization can then share a few initiatives where that amount of funding could really be impactful. That gives us an opportunity to learn more about this organization and the incredible work that they're doing, feel more connected to it, and potentially even gives us some agency if that nonprofit then says to us, hey, as a group, we'd love for you to discuss now and vote, or you tell us, decide where you think your funds could have the most impact, where you would like to support. And that's something that a lot of smaller dollar donors just never have the opportunity, right, to even learn at that level, let alone help direct funds towards something collectively. So there's certainly that pooling of funds, that potential, that learning, and then, of course, the potential agency as well. I will say when I see nonprofits starting their own version of a giving circle, some call them giving societies or fundraising circles, donor circles, whatever the term is, not all of them give that level of agency to donors. Instead, some take that opportunity to share back with a group where those funds have gone. So with your pooled funds from last quarter, here's what we were able to do with them. And so you're still taking that opportunity to build that level of connection and understanding with that donor group. So I think that's really important. The other side of this, again, is coming back to the community side, right? And I think there's a real opportunity for nonprofits with that too. Nonprofits are used to talking about their mission. They're used to bringing people together around the cause that they're focused on. You think about a nonprofit's board, right? This is a vehicle to build that same kind of community and understanding around your mission in a much more scalable way. And if you think about the various ways you're already doing that, how can you bring some of those opportunities to your giving circle, right? Inviting them to existing events, inviting them to existing learning opportunities, and creating space for them as a community to connect with each other under your brand umbrella. It doesn't all have to be you. This is part of the scalability part of this, right? You don't have to have all the coffee chats with every single one of the Giving Circle members. But if you create a space where those members can now connect and have one-on-one coffee chats together, both knowing they're part of this community, that's going to strengthen those social ties that will strengthen their connection to your organization and to this recurring giving model. So I would say those are a couple of my thoughts on how that could be manifested within an organizational setting. And just one last thing I'll note to remind everyone is that, like I said earlier, when we asked tens of thousands of people why they joined, connecting with other like-minded people is number one, right? So it really is the key part of this. And that is something that you can facilitate as a nonprofit in a variety of ways. This Giving Circle model has been adopted and adapted in a variety of ways for different community groups, with different goals and focus areas. And so the most important thing probably at the end of this is just to do that in a way that's authentic to you and to your community and your organization.
Well, and I honestly can't think of a better place to do this than in healthcare because so in healthcare, we actually at Accordant, we even start what we call affinity councils, where so in healthcare, I mean, typically your board, your foundation board is going to be comprised of different folks.
Mhm.
But in healthcare, I mean, if you've had a heart attack, I mean, you have had, that is a heart and vascular service line, you know, that is your health episode. You're typically going to want to give to cardiovascular care. Again, going back to patients just want to help others the way they were helped. You're going to want to honor your cardiologist. And, you're also going to want to be around like people like-minded that have had the same experience as you. And so, for example, a lot of our campaigns that we help our clients do is we'll help them start affinity councils saying heart and vascular, neuro, orthopedics,
Mhm.
oncology, again, around this notion that you just said, like-minded people want to be around people that have the same passion for that cause. And in healthcare, that is typically your service line, the clinical area of support. Now, many folks in the community just want to see the hospital thrive. But again, patients and families, they want to help others the way they were helped. And two, the other thing that I say time and time again is regardless of your capacity to, you could be a very wealthy person. If you've never, say you come in and have a experience in the healthcare system, you are grateful, you want to give back. Typically, that first gift is going to be $25 to $100 in honor of your doctor, your nurse. And so, regardless of, yes, sometimes, yes, the big gifts come in right away. But a lot of times it is those smaller giving amounts that we've been talking about that Giving Circle members do. So, quite frankly, I can't see a more perfect place to have a Giving Circle.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you definitely have that domain expertise in that sector, but everything you just said resonates with me a great deal. We often talk about giving circles. When you're thinking about starting a new giving circle, the first place to start is think about who are other people who would want to connect, right? Because this is about the connection piece, so as well as the impact. And to your, everything you just shared and the fact that there are already these affinity groups, that's such a perfect existing infrastructure or just model, that you're already seeing where this could really live. And the giving doesn't have to be mandatory. Yes, a lot of giving circles require members to give a certain amount every quarter or once or twice a year. And so you can certainly set it up in that same way. But we are seeing more and more groups making it flexible. And so it's more inclusive of a broader range of people, regardless of their capacity, because they're all contributing to the community building part that's important for these groups to really thrive. So there are different ways to think about, that financial ask as well that enables a broader diversity of people and capacities to come in under one umbrella. And what we do often see is that people even with much higher capacity, want to be a part of these models because of that community building piece. And so it becomes this wonderful, top of funnel potentially for these organizations where they will end up identifying many people of higher capacity in these groups. And this is a great way to begin that relationship and to cultivate that relationship further as they then potentially put them on some of these major gift paths that they,
Yes.
would pursue down the line. So I think it's all very accretive, to that
Yes.
to that fundraising goal long term, even if you leave it more open ended at the front and you think about it more as a community.
Well, I love that you brought that, because I can just hear people, oh my gosh, you said campaign. When we're in campaign, we're raising millions of dollars. We have a gift pyramid, and we don't want, someone that could give a $50,000 gift to just give $100 of their giving circle. I don't think
Yeah.
that's the case, just like you said, because the community aspect of this, someone who has the capacity to make a major gift might also want to be a part of a giving circle because
Yes.
of that community building and that social aspect and that collective mindset that they're sharing community and sharing a cause with like-minded folks. On the flip side, again, and we think about healthcare, most of our major donors are older, and we're going to be working with our major gift officers, soliciting those for gifts. But so much we talk about in healthcare, how do we get new donors? Just like every other nonprofit in this country, bringing in new folks, especially younger folks. And so again, we can have our affinity council, with our major gift fundraising, but gosh, the giving circle could be that avenue to help bring in those new folks who've never given, because you'd be surprised. I mean, in healthcare philanthropy, the vast majority of patients don't even know we have a foundation, and so again, this could be a great way. Well, and
Exactly.
so, again, going back to healthcare, I think about, in healthcare, we raise big dollars, right? The vast majority of shops in healthcare are understaffed, don't have the staffing resources, wearing multiple hats, doing 6 different jobs. I mean, we would say if you're anyone in health, anybody in philanthropy, this is the case in any nonprofit, right? I don't think most nonprofits anywhere will say we have all the resources we need. But I say that that's also true in healthcare, even though we tend to be viewed as more bigger business. I say that let's enter Grapevine. So let's talk about Grapevine before we wrap up, because this is a tech tool, a tech platform that makes this easy. And to an organization that is short on staff and resources, that is liquid gold, making this easy to run on the back end, but also for the user. So, Emily, you founded Grapevine. Tell us about Grapevine. Why is it so easy for folks to start the Giving Circle or participate in one?
Of course, happy to share. Grapevine, well, as I mentioned earlier, we like to say Grapevine was really built by and for giving circles because of that collaboration from the start. And so Grapevine is now the only platform dedicated to the giving circle model that enables people to come together and connect and pool donations and give these larger grants in a recurring manner over time. So we've really built the platform to enable all of those elements. It's not just a crowdfunding page. It's not just a transactional experience. When you set up a giving circle page on Grapevine or a giving fund or a collaborative fund or whatever you want to call it, right? When you set up a group on Grapevine, you get a community space. That's the first thing. You get a community space where members can join and share more about why they joined and what they care about, and bookmark nonprofits and connect with each other and communicate with each other. You also, as part of that, have a whole suite of features that enable connecting and collaborative decision making, from organizing events to nonprofit nominations, project nominations, and voting. All of these things that really help facilitate that collaboration and decision making process and connecting. So you have all of that. And then you also have the donation processing, pooling of money, and then granting out to the nonprofits or specific nonprofit. If this group is set up to support one particular nonprofit, that's also fully supported by the platform. And we issue all their charitable tax receipts, and we invite the nonprofits to share thank you notes and impact updates. So we help close that loop for members. So it just keeps it all in one place and makes it easy for for anyone to create one of these groups in just a couple of minutes and start inviting their friends and family and communities in to get involved. So that's where we really uniquely sit. I would say that our whole goal is to just, as soon as someone decides they want to get involved, we're here to help you take action. Whether you want to start a group like I just mentioned, you can do that in just a couple of minutes. It's free, it's easy to set up, and then you're off to the races. Or if you want to find a group to join, we host about 1,200 active giving circles now on the platform. And we also host the Global Giving Circle directory that includes thousands more that we've been able to map that are out there in different countries and, that might not necessarily be using the Grapevine tools, but we know exist. So it's a great first place to go if you're looking to try to find a group that you might want to join, or even find some groups in your community or focused on the cause your nonprofit is working on that you might want to try to develop a relationship with and raise funds from over time as a nonprofit.
Well, I love that. And, I had, if you've watched the episode in April with the 100 Strong in Central Ohio, you may recall Danielle, the founder of the 100 Strong, said, one of her lessons learned, oh my gosh, we did not start using Grapevine. I think they were started using spreadsheets and just kind of what, as my husband would say, ham and egging it. And she said, they were so thankful to find Grapevine, and it was life-changing for their organization. And so I think that just goes back to name of the game, easy, right? And you truly have thought of everything. And obviously that's over time, but truly, as a member of a giving circle, I just did a vote 2 weeks ago for the 100 Strong. We were voting on percentage, there we give to 3 charities, and we were voting on like how to reallocate maybe those dollars to be a little bit more equitable to all 3 charities. And so it's great. You get to vote. You have a say. They sent the results back a week later. And again, it's just so easy.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's really our goal, make it easy for anyone to get involved. And I would say that we've now expanded from that as well to think about how can we also help amplify the impact and the experience for members. And so we are now doing even more work to raise charitable matching grants to help amplify the impact of these giving circles. So if your group is pooling $5,000, if we can add another 1,000 or 2 to that by getting some larger funders to provide matching grants, right, then that's a great way to increase your impact in your local community. So we have some of those programs running now, and we're constantly looking for more partners to expand that. And then we do a lot of community building. We have a Giving Circle leader peer learning cohort and a place where people can share learnings and ask questions. And we facilitate workshops and roundtables, things like that, to just really help this community connect with each other and learn from each other and support each other in the process.
Okay. Well, this has been so great. And as we know, this podcast is called We Can't Do This Alone. And I always end every episode by asking my guest, Emily, what does that mean to you when I say we can't do this alone? What does that mean to you?
Well, we can't do this alone because the challenges are too big for any one of us to take on our own, right? And so we need each other to learn, to pool funds, to pool knowledge, networks. And so, the challenges require us to come together. And it turns out it's also a better experience for all of us to go through this process together than alone as well.
Well, and to do all this is a lot easier on Grapevine, as we have learned today. And so, okay, well, that concludes our episode. I will just end again. First and foremost, thank you so much, Emily, for joining us today. I think this topic is fascinating. I'm not going to stop learning and exploring this. As I said, I think what a great model this could be in healthcare as far as helping our patients and families come together with like-minded folks who have gone through those same experiences in healthcare, but also what a wonderful way to bring in new prospects, new donors. And so, I will just say, for those of you out there, especially in the healthcare arena, reach out to us. Reach out to Emily. You can find Emily on LinkedIn. That's how I met Emily. I reached out to her on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me at any time and we can help connect. But I do think, I just, like I said, I can't say enough about this model and what I think it's going to help continue to just grow in this industry where we so clearly need to be focusing around looking at the number of donors supporting all of the vast, incredible nonprofits in this country. And so, again, thank you so much, Emily. Also, check out Grapevine's website. Again, I love the tool. But again, thank you so much, Emily, for your time today. Thank you so much to our audience for listening today. This is We Can't Do This Alone. I'm your host, Erin Stitzel, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.